Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my entire physical TBR. So these are all of the unread books that I own. If you've been watching my monthly TBR videos, at the start of the year I talked about how I don't have enough room on my TBR cart for my entire physical TBR. So what I did, since I'm such a seasonal reader, is any book that I knew I would only read during a specific time of year. So like the summery beach reads, the spooky season fall books, the Christmas books, I took all those off the cart. But now that we're gearing into summer and it's about to be June, I'm ready to bring the beach reads back out and put those onto the cart and kind of make room and shift things around. So in the process, I just got my entire physical TBR together and I've been going through it, and I thought what better time than now to show you guys all these books. I have so many. There's a ton of stacks beside me, so we might be here for a bit. Get comfy, grab a drink, grab a snack. We'll definitely count them all up in total how many there are at the end. So let's jump right into it. I'm gonna start with this stack first because at the top are some books that I recently hauled for the springtime. The first one is Picking Daisies on Sundays. I believe this is a childhood friends to lovers trope, which is my favorite ever, and it just feels like it would be so perfect for spring because of the title and the cover. So hoping to sneak this one in before spring is over. I might be able to read it the last week of May, we'll see, but definitely want to get to this one sometime during the spring because it feels so spring coded to me. Ready or Not by Cara Bastone is another book I hauled for spring. I don't know exactly when it takes place, but the cover was giving spring vibes, so that's why I picked it up. I know this one is accidental pregnancy trope, which normally isn't my thing, but I've heard from other people who they don't usually like that trope either. They thought it was done really well in here and really enjoyed it. So I would like to give this one a try, and I'm interested to see if I like this author's writing because she has another book that just came out. So if I like this one, I would like to read that one too. Hoping to sneak this one in before spring is over, but if not, maybe I'll read it whenever I'm in the mood for it another time or push it to next spring. Forget Me Not by Julie Soto is a romance between a wedding planner and a florist, and I've heard that flowers are a very central part of the story, and Forget Me Not is a flower and flowers are all over the cover. So this is another one I would love to read before spring is over. The flowers and just the fact that they're planning a wedding together in this book just feels so spring coded to me, and this is an author I've heard great things about, so I would love to give her a try. The next books I have in the stack are multiple books that I have by the same author. The first two are both by Abby Jimenez. We have the Happy Ever After playlist and then Life's Too Short. These are books 2 and 3 in her Friend Zone series, which I read book 1 in that series last summer and really enjoyed it. So these are the only 2 books I have left by her to read that are on her backlist, and Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite authors, so definitely would like to get to these 2 soon. I've heard really great things about this one especially. I know it's One of Us is Famous trope, and based on what happened to our main female character in this book in the friend zone, I'm very curious to see where her story goes in this book. So I'm looking forward to picking these up at some point. I'll just read them whenever I'm in the mood for it. There's not really a specific time of year I'm planning to pick them up, but Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite authors, so I would love to get to these 2 very soon. Next, I have 2 books by Ashley Poston. The first one is The 7-Year Slip. This has been on my TBR for forever, and I feel like I'm just saving it for the perfect time, which I don't know when that is. I just never really am completely in the mood for it, and I want to give this book the fairest chance that it has because I feel like this could be a 5-star read. I just need to read it at the right time. I know it's magical realism where our main character goes into this apartment that somehow goes 7 years in the past, and I think it's a romance with whoever lived in the apartment back then, which sounds so fascinating. I've heard the best things about this book, and I really loved The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, so definitely want to get to this one soon, again whenever I'm really fully in the mood to read it. And I also have a novel love story by Ashley Poston. This is her release from last year, I believe, which did not get as great of reviews. I've heard very mixed things on it, but the concept sounds so cool to me. Our main character ends up somehow being transported to this fictional world of her favorite book series, which as a reader that would be my dream, and it sounds so cool, but I don't know, I've heard mixed reviews on how it's executed in the book, so we'll see. Hoping to love it. Again, don't know when the best time to pick this one up is, but whenever I'm in the mood to read it, I will. I probably will get to the 7-Year Slip first and then this one, but very excited to read it when I do. Okay, and then I have a couple books by Mariana Zapata. She has been kind of hit or miss for me. I've read a couple of her books. One of them was just so-so, one of them I really enjoyed. So the next one I have that I've heard really rave reviews about is All Roads Lead Here. I believe this one takes place in Colorado, and I believe our main character is the nanny for a single father, and I might pick this one up and read it next month month because it takes place out west and I'm going on a trip out west. So I feel like the mountainous vibes will fit the setting of my trip. So might read it next month. Excited to see how I feel about it though. I know MZ is the queen of the slow burn, and I've heard that this book by her is a lot of people's favorite. I also have The Wall of Winnipeg in me. I know our mailman character in this is a football player. I think he's Canadian and he needs like a green card to play in the US or something, so it ends up being marriage of convenience with his manager or assistant, something like that. But I've heard great things about this one too, and I love a sports romance, so curious to see what I will think of this one. And then I have 2 books in the Boys of Tommen series. I have book 4 and 5. Book 4 is Redeeming Six. This is part 2 of Joey and Aoife's love story. I have not gotten around to this. I'm just intimidated because it is so long, so I just need to carve out some time to sit down and read it. But Boys of Tommen series is one of my favorites. And then Joey and Aoife's story that started in book 3 I love, but just not as much as I loved books 1 and 2, so I feel like that's another reason I've been putting this one off. But I definitely need to continue on, and I'm especially excited to continue on with book 5, which is Taming Seven. This is Gibbsy's story, which is one of my favorite characters. I feel like I'm hesitant to read this one though because Gibbsy is the fan favorite character, I would say, of the series, and I've heard that this book disappointed a lot of people. But on the flip side of that, I have heard people say they still enjoyed it despite being a little bit let down. So really antsy to read this one though, to find out Gibbsy's backstory and read his romance. And then I know book 6 in this series either just came out or is about to whenever I'm posting this, so really excited to continue on with the Boys of Tommen series because it is truly one of my favorites. Okay, I'm going to start with this next stack. At the top I know there's a few literary fiction books. The first one is Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've given so many of her books 5 stars, and this is one of her backlist books. The premise sounds so fascinating to me. I know our main character ends up going out with one of her best friends one night and they run into her ex-boyfriend, and then from there the book kind of follows 2 different plot lines, one being what happens if she goes home with her best friend and the other being if she ends up going home with her ex-boyfriend. So I love books that kind of explore different life paths and like what would happen in different scenarios. Sounds super fascinating to me, so definitely want to read this one sometime soon. And then another one of her backlist books that I have is Forever Interrupted. This one to me sounds very similar to One True Loves, which is one of her books that I did give 5 stars. I know we follow our main female character whose fiance passes away, and then I think she ends up connecting with the fiance's mother. I think it was kind of a whirlwind romance and they got engaged quickly, so she didn't really know her future mother-in-law that well. I feel like a lot of her backlist books deal with very deep life lesson type stories, which I love, so I feel like this one will be emotional and a tearjerker for sure. Definitely gonna have to be in the right mindset to read this one, but very excited to pick it up. Okay, and then I have Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This was a very highly anticipated release for me when it came out, so I can't believe that I still haven't read it yet. Coco Mellors has one other book out, which is called Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I love that book. It is one of my 5-star reads. I feel like her writing is very similar to Sally Rooney. It's very slice of life, very mundane, but I love that kind of writing. But I know in this one we follow sister relationships, which is one of my favorite things ever to read about in books. I think in this book we have one sister that passed away and the other 3 sisters live in different cities around the world, so they're coming together to grieve the loss of their sister. I feel like it's going to be again another emotional one, but excited to read more from Coco Mellors. And then I have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. If you've been here, you will know Sally Rooney is probably my #1 favorite author because Normal People is my favorite book of all time. She is one of those authors that you either love it or hate it, and I definitely am on the love side. I love her writing. Similar to Coco Mellors, it's very slice of life, very mundane, and I love it. I've never read anything like Sally Rooney's writing. It feels like she took these thoughts from my brain that I've never been able to put into words and somehow puts it in her books and makes it so relatable, and I just connect so deeply to her characters and to her stories. So this is the only book I have left to read from her, so I've been kind of holding out and saving it, but I did put it on my 2025 TBR as one of the 25 books I wanted to read this year. So I feel like before the year is out, I will read this one when I'm just really in the mood for some Sally Rooney. I kind of hope that we'll get an announcement soon that she is writing another book, so maybe holding out for that, but I do plan to read it at some point this year regardless. Another lit fic I have is Alone with You in the Ether by Olive E. Blake. This one has been compared to Normal People before, so if I ever hear a book is compared to one of my favorites, I have to give it a try. I think this one is kind of a love story. I've heard that it's like right person, wrong time, which I love that trope personally, even though it's frustrating. I feel like it's very realistic, and I've heard great things about Olive E. Blake and her writing and her book, so definitely want to give her a try. I've never read any of her other books, so if I enjoy this one, there are a few other books of hers on my radar that I would like to read as well. The rest of the stack looks like we have rom-coms and romances. The first one on top is First Time Caller by BK Borison. This is her latest release that came out earlier in the year, and I do wish I had read it around Valentine's Day time because I've heard it's perfect to read then. And our male main character's last name is Valentine, and it just sounds so cute. I think he's the host of a radio show, then our female main character is a single mom, and I think one of her children calls into the show asking for love advice for her mom, and then it follows the romance between the single mom and this radio host, which sounds so cute. BK Borison wrote the Love Light Farm series, which has been kind of hit or miss for me. I absolutely loved the first book in that series, but books 2 and 3 didn't really work out, so I've heard kind of mixed reviews for this one as well. Some people love it, some people don't, so I'm curious to see what I think of it and how different it is from her Love Light Farm series. How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. I picked this one up because Yulin Kwong is the screenwriter for Emily Henry's People We Meet on Vacation adaptation, which that is my favorite Emily Henry book, so I was really curious to read a book from the screenwriter of the adaptation, and I think this book actually follows a romance between screenwriters, which sounds very fascinating. I think it leans more on the emotional romance side though, instead of being like a fluffy rom-com. I think it takes place in LA and Hollywood, so that setting to me feels very summery. This might be one that I pick up and read over the next season. The Love of My Afterlife is like a magical realism rom-com where our main character finds love in the afterlife, and it sounds so fun. I've heard great things about this book. I've heard that it doesn't take itself too seriously and it's funny and just a good time. Initially I was thinking I would read this one during spooky season because it's like an afterlife magical realism type romance, but I feel like I could read it any time of year. It might be a good one though to pick up in between some like darker books during spooky season, so I might save it for that time of year. I also have One Star Romance by Lara Hankin. In this one we follow a maid of honor and a best man who are in a wedding together, except they can't stand one another because our maid of honor is an author and the best man gave her book that she wrote a 1-star review. So that premise sounds so unique and fun. I'm so curious to see like the backstory on that, why this man gave her book a 1-star review. I feel like it's going to be a great enemies to lovers romance, and I haven't heard too many people talk about this one, but the reviews that I have heard have been pretty positive, so excited to read this one at some point. Then I have The Love Wager by Len Painter. This is the second book in an interconnected standalone series, and the first book in this series I did not hear the best reviews about, but part of me is like maybe I should read that one first to get the full backstory, but I'm sure I'd be fine to just read this one without reading the first book. So I'm curious to give this one a try because I've really only read YA books from Len Painter and they haven't really worked for me. So I've kind of heard that you prefer one or the other, so I'm thinking maybe her adult romances will work better for me. It sounds like it'll be a fun rom-com. I think our two main characters are like putting a bet on who can get a date first, so it sounds like a fun time, and I am curious to see what I think of Len Painter's adult romance. Then I have Tell Me Lies. I picked this one up because I heard such great things about the show and I really want to watch it, but I did want to read the book first. I know this one is about a very toxic relationship, so it's going to be so much drama and I'm here for it. I definitely think I will binge this one. It's been on a few TBRs this year. I've just had other things I wanted to read before it, so I never got around to it, but definitely would like to read it at some point because I do really want to watch the show after. Then I have Confess by Colleen Hoover. It's been a while since I read a Colleen Hoover book, and this is the only one I have on my physical TBR. I know in this one our male main character is an artist and people sent in their confessions to him and he somehow turns it into art. I would be curious to see how that concept plays out and see how I feel about a Coho book after not reading from her in a while. I did like her books when I read them. They're so easy to read. They're very fast paced. Her books got me back into reading, so I might pick this one up at some point when I just need a fast paced, easy read, maybe if I'm feeling a little bit slumpy. Then I have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a YA romantasy that I picked up after seeing so many 5-star reviews for it, but since the initial hype has died down, I have not really been excited to pick this one up, to be honest, because I feel like the second wave of people who have come in and read this book have all given it negative reviews, and I've heard that it's just a little too similar to a few other book series. So I just don't know about this one, and this is a start to a series, and I think all books in the series are now out, and I have not heard the best things about the books that follow this one, so that hasn't really motivated me to want to read this one. But I feel like I want to give it a try to see for myself what I think of it at some point. I'm just so curious, but I don't know when that will be. Then I have Two Doors Away. This is a book that really intrigues me because I haven't heard anyone ever talk about this book. I happened to just see it at this book warehouse sale, and I really liked the cover, and I read the back and it sounded interesting to me. We follow these two people who live 2 doors away, and the person who lives in between them used to always play the piano, and then all of a sudden they don't hear the piano anymore. So I think they end up meeting and coming together trying to figure out why the piano playing stopped, and it just sounded cute. It sounded charming. I think it's like a British rom-com, and again, it intrigues me that I haven't heard anyone talk about this before, because I feel like every other book I pick up is based on someone else's review. So I would like to read a book that I just happen to find for myself and see what I think of it, and maybe I could put other people onto it if I end up loving it. It could be a hidden gem, who knows. Definitely want to read it at some point soon. Okay, this next stack here has various types of different fiction books. On the top we have a historical fiction. This is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This book follows the life of Shakespeare's son, Hamnet, which I'm very intrigued by Shakespeare and his life. I find him so fascinating and such an interesting person in history, and I'm very intrigued to read this book, but I think I'm just intimidated because I'm just afraid the writing is going to be hard for me to understand. But it is a pretty short book. It's like just over 300 pages, so I definitely want to read it at some point. I have heard great things about it from people who have read it, but I just don't know if it'll be completely for me. I don't know if I'll gel with the writing style. But definitely will have to give it a try for myself to see. This is one that I feel like would be a good springtime read, so maybe I'll get this one read, sneak it in soon before spring is over. I also have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is one of my 25 books I want to read in 2025. I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt a few years ago and really loved it. I found her writing style to be so unique and very immersive, so I would love to read more from her. I think this is the only other book she's ever written, and it just sounds really fascinating. I know we follow our main character, who is a young boy. He ends up going into this museum with his mother, and there ends up being an attack on the museum. I don't think his mother survives, so we follow the boy's life after that. But The Goldfinch is a painting in the museum that he was very enamored by, so really excited to read this one. It's just such a brick, but planning to read it at some point in 2025. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed is one that I feel like took off when Book Talk was first becoming a thing. I heard this one mentioned so many times, and I heard really great things, and I actually got this one for free on my birthday. I went to this bookstore and spent a certain amount of money, so they let me pick a free book off of this cart, and this one I recognized and thought I would just give it a try. I know our main character is a young black woman who babysits for a white family, and one day she's out with the young white girl in the family, and I think she gets accused of kidnapping, so I know there's going to be a lot of commentary on race in here, so I am just intrigued based on the great reviews that I've heard for this book. Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I don't know if this is historical fiction or just general fiction, but I think it's like a family drama and just exploring family dynamics and relationships, and I think our main character Betty is the daughter of this big family, and they are Native American, and it talks about their hardships, and I've heard really great things about this book. It doesn't take a lot to convince me. If I see a few good reviews and it sounds interesting to me, I will pick it up, so that's why I got this one. Sorrow and Bliss I picked up because it was another one I saw compared to Normal People. I think mainly just the writing style I heard compared to Sally Rooney's writing. It's very slice of life, mundane, a character story, which is my favorite kind of book. So that's really all I know about this one, and it was enough to make me want to pick it up. A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman follows our main character Uwe, who is this grumpy old man. I feel like he's dealt with some hardship in his life, but then a family moves in next door that kind of softens his heart, and I've just heard really great things about this one. I've read a few books by Frederick Bachman now, and I really love his writing. I find it very unique, and I just love the way he writes about people and human relationships. It's very fascinating, and I know this one got adapted into a movie, so very excited to read another Frederick Bachman book. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I've had for a while. I've heard about it for a long time because it was a Reese's book club pick, and I feel like when I first got back into reading, I was really gravitating towards those books. All I know is that our main character Eleanor is a little bit unconventional, and I think this is more slice of life following our main character, which are my favorite kinds of reads. And I've heard really great things about this book. I've heard it's a little bit sad and depressing, so definitely will need to keep that in mind when I pick this one up, but excited to read it. Less by Andrew Sean Greer is a book that I thrifted after seeing a few good reviews about it. I thought I would give it a try when it was such a great price. I know our main character is a writer. I think he's kind of struggling in his writing career, and then he ends up getting an invitation to his ex's wedding, so he tries to make his life look a lot better than it is, so when he goes to the wedding he'll look like he's really succeeding to his ex. I've heard mostly good reviews for this one, so excited to read it at some point. The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. I love Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and I've heard great things about this one by her as well. I just fell in love with her writing style, and I know in this one our main character owns a bookstore, so really want to read this one. I've heard it's so cozy, so endearing, so heartwarming, and it's a very short book as well, under 300 pages. So I feel like I'll read it quickly, and it also just got adapted into a movie. So that's really motivating me to want to read it. I feel like it does seem like a very cozy read that would be perfect for winter. I didn't get a chance to read it this past winter, so maybe I'll push it back to this upcoming winter, but it just sounds like another uplifting story that'll be perfect to cozy up with. The Messy Lives of Book People I've had for a while. My husband actually got me this book. He said he just wanted to buy me a book one day, and he saw this one. He was like, this is so you. You're messy and you're a book person. I just haven't gotten around to reading it. It's actually funny because I did see that Destiny read this book for a video where she had her boyfriend pick her reads. I'm like, that's hilarious that both of our guys picked this book for us. So I don't know, she didn't rate it too highly, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about it, but I do want to read it at some point since my husband got this for me. That's so sweet of him to think of me and get me this as a gift. I just have had other things I wanted to read first, but I've had this one for a while, so I would like to give it a try. The Dinner List by Rebecca Searle has the most interesting concept. I really want to read it soon because it's been on the TBR for so long. I've just prioritized other things first, but I feel like I will love this one. This book explores the concept of that question people ask: if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you pick? And our main character is having dinner with the people she actually would pick. I know Audrey Hepburn is one of the people in the book, which is so fascinating. I'm really interested to see how the concept is going to play out and how it's written in here. I read another book by Rebecca Searle last year and absolutely loved it. She writes books with really deep life themes, and they're usually magical realism, so this is one I do really think I would like. It's a short book, so I want to get to it soon. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis has been on the TBR for too long. I really need to read it. It's on my 2025 TBR. This is a historical fiction that takes place in the 1960s, and our main character is a scientist, but she is one of the only women in the field at that time, so she faces a lot of adversity and discrimination, and she really wants to teach other women about science, so she does it through this cooking show, which during this time I'm sure is a way she's able to reach a lot of women. So I'm sure it's going to be very women empowering, which I love. Really want to read this one. I've seen so many 5-star reviews for it, so I'm planning to pick it up at some point in 2025. And then I have Mad Honey. I've heard this one compared to Where the Crawdads Sing, which is one of my favorite books. I know in this one we follow a murder and a trial, and a lot of the book revolves around bees and honey, which I love honey, so I'm very fascinated that that's a big part of the story. I've heard that this is kind of slow paced though, but I would be really curious to see where the mystery of the story goes and how everything plays out. Okay, this next stack here are books that kind of intimidate me. A lot of them at the top are classics. The first one is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is on my 2025 TBR. I have seen a few quotes from Sylvia Plath and just absolutely fell in love with her writing style and just really connected to what she's had to say. I think this is one of her only, if not the only, books that's not a poetry book, so I'm very fascinated by it. I feel like it deals with mental health and it's going to be a little bit heavier and darker, so I definitely have to be in the right headspace before I pick this one up, but I just love her writing from the little quotes that I've seen from her so much, so I do feel like I will connect with this one a lot. Then I have Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This is a book that I hear a lot about, but I couldn't really tell you what it's about. I've just heard that it's a good book to read during the spring, but I'm scared. The language in classics does really intimidate me. I feel like it takes me forever forever to get through because I just can't comprehend the writing style. It's hard for me to understand for some reason. It's just like a disconnect. So I think I might have been feeling overly ambitious when I picked this one up and planned to read it during the spring, but we will see. And then I have Emma by Jane Austen. I picked this one up for similar reasons. I heard that it was a good Jane Austen book to read during the spring, which I feel like honestly any of her books are, because they're set in the Regency era, which always gives me spring vibes for some reason. I think just like the parties and the dresses. But this one I know follows our main character Emma, who is kind of a matchmaker, and she sets people in her life up. And I'm actually reading a modern day retelling. I'm reading Emma of 83rd Street right now and absolutely loving it. But it is a contemporary book, so it's been really easy to understand and digest, and I've loved getting that story in a more consumable way. But maybe since I have that one under my belt, it will be not so hard and intimidating for me to understand this one, because I did give this one a try and pick it up a few years ago and only got a couple chapters in. It was just taking me forever to get through, and I was not understanding what was going on. I had to look up a summary after every chapter. I do think now would be a better time to read it, since again I do have a retelling of Emma under my belt and I kind of understand the story a little bit more. I feel a little more confident that I could comprehend this one better. Also by Jane Austen, I have Pride and Prejudice, which technically I have read before, but it was back in high school and I just feel like I don't really remember a lot of the details. And recently I did see the movie for the very first time in theaters when it came out for its 20th anniversary and just absolutely loved it, and it made me want to go back and read the book. And I feel like again, since I know the story now after seeing the movie, it will help me to understand the book and make it not so difficult while I'm reading to understand. This is actually my copy from high school. When I was at my mom's house last weekend, I picked it up. So I'm like, I'll just include this. It's technically on the physical TBR because I would like to reread it at some point. I also picked up Wuthering Heights from my mom's house. It's that same Barnes & Noble Classics edition, which would lead me to believe that this was also required reading for high school, but I do not remember reading this at all. So maybe this was one that I like Spark Notes only, but I really don't ever remember reading this because I don't know the story at all. This one's getting made into a movie with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, and I just don't know the story of Wuthering Heights, and it gets referenced so much. So I really would like to read it before the movie comes out and give it a try and just know the story, because again, I feel like everyone talks about it all the time and I have no clue what's going on. So I would like to know the story and read this book. Then I have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is on my 2025 TBR, and although this one's a classic, for some reason it doesn't intimidate me as much. I feel like Oscar Wilde's writing style is a lot easier for me to understand. It's a lot more humorous, so I feel like I connect with it more. I've read a few things by Oscar Wilde and just really enjoy his writing style, and this is his most well-known work, I would say, and I've never read it, which is crazy, so I definitely need to. I know our main character kind of becomes obsessed with this portrait of himself, and it has a lot of commentary on like youth and beauty, which I'm really fascinated by. So we'll definitely be reading this at some point in 2025. The next classic I have is The Razor's Edge. This one I got a couple summers ago because I went to Paris and I was looking for books set in Paris, and I heard that this is a great one. I also saw Emma Chamberlain at one point say that this is one of her favorite books, and I did start it. I did read quite a bit in it and I just never finished it. It was a little bit difficult to understand. I had to like really use all my brain power to understand what was going on, but it wasn't so difficult to where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just not clicking with this at all. I don't remember really anything that happened, but I would like to maybe give it a try again at some point and finish it out, because I know a lot of people say really good things about this one. I also got The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir for similar reasons. This one is set in Paris and we're following 3 different women, and I actually had no idea that this took place in the 60s and was written back then. I thought it was a more contemporary read because the cover is just giving contemporary to me. I love this cover. It's one of my very favorites. I think even if I read this and don't enjoy it, I will never unhaul this book because the cover is so cool. But this is actually 3 vignettes in one book following 3 different women and their lives, so it's more like slice of life, more of a character study, which is fascinating. And I think I tried to give this one a chance and I started reading it, and it was originally written in French and translated, so I wasn't completely connecting with it, but at some point I'm sure I'll give it a try. I probably could honestly break it up and read each woman's story at different points. I don't have to read the whole thing at once, I would assume, but again, one of my favorite covers that I own. The next book I have is Kai Kei, and someone is honestly gonna have to convince me to read this because I just have no desire to be Completely transparent, I saw this one day when I was shopping at a book warehouse sale, and it was one of those situations where I drove all the way there. It was like 45 minutes away. I wasn't finding anything. I didn't want to leave empty-handed, and I recognized this book because a few booktubers that I follow read it and loved it. But they're booktubers that I love watching, but we don't really have similar taste. I think I just saw this, recognized it, didn't want to leave empty-handed, so I went with this one, and it was at a good price. And I've heard good things from people, but again, we have very different book tastes, so I don't know if it will completely work for me. All I know about this book is that it is a retelling. I don't know what it is a retelling of, and I've tried to read the back to understand. All I've gathered from it is that it's about the daughter of a king. That's Kai. So someone convinced me to read this. If you've read it and loved it, please let me know. I would love to give it a try if people think I would like it. Otherwise, might unhaul it at some point. I also have The Magpie Murders. This one has been on the TBR for so long, and it's another one someone's gonna have to convince me to read. Otherwise, I might unhaul it at some point. All I know about this book is that somehow it's connected to Agatha Christie. I don't know if it's a retelling or just kind of inspired by one of her mysteries, but if you read this and enjoyed it, please let me know. Otherwise, it's not really calling my name. Leave the World Behind as another one I really don't know if I will read at some point, just because it got adapted into a movie, and I had no idea that it did, but I heard people talking about the movie and then saying what it was about, and the more I heard them talking about it, I was like, wait, this sounds like that book that I own. And they ended up explaining the whole plot of the movie, and so it spoiled it for me. I kind of wish that hadn't happened because I probably would have been more inclined to read this one. But the premise is basically that this couple ends up going to this Airbnb, I believe, and then all of a sudden there's like a citywide blackout. And now that I know what happens, I feel like it kind of ruins the story a little bit. But if you liked this book, if it's different to the movie, let me know. Maybe I will give it a try because it is a short one, so maybe I can get through it quickly at some point. It's like 220 something pages, so maybe it could be a good fast-paced read to pick up at some point. Please let me know if you've read it. Next, I have Eat, Pray, Love. This is another one where I was shopping. I think I was at a book thrift store and I didn't want to leave empty-handed. Saw this and recognized it because of how popular the movie was, and I just wanted to get something. I feel like someone again will have to convince me to read this one. On paper, it sounds like my ideal kind of book because I know it's about like traveling and finding yourself and food, and those are lots of my favorite things, but I feel like this had its moment and now that ship has kind of sailed, so I don't have a huge interest in picking it up. But again, if you've read it, loved it, think I should try it, please let me know. On a very similar note, and then I promise we're gonna get into books that I actually really do want to read, this is The Magician's Daughter. I got this on that same book warehouse trip where I didn't want to leave empty-handed. This one I'd never heard anyone say anything about, and I felt like it could be something I might potentially enjoy. It is a fantasy book and it's set in Ireland, which I tend to love books set in Ireland, so I think that's what drew me to this book. But again, I haven't heard anyone talk about it, so if you've happened to have read it, let me know if you loved it. I think I did look up reviews for it and it didn't have the greatest reviews on Goodreads, but who knows, that doesn't always indicate how I might feel about it. It does seem like it would be a good one for spring. It has like bunnies and flowers on the cover, so maybe I will try it at some point soon. Okay, battery change, angle change, moving into some books that I am truly very excited about. These are books that to me feel like they're gonna be perfect for summer. Starting with some romances. The first one is Deep In by Ali Hazelwood. This is her most recent release that I am so excited about. It's actually the very last Ali Hazelwood book I have left to read. This is her first sports romance too, which is so exciting because I love a sports romance, and it's between a college swimmer and diver. Very intrigued. I've heard mixed things. I've heard that it is quite spicy, but that's usually how her books tend to go, and I'm not complaining, so very excited to read this one. I feel like because both our main characters are involved in water sports, that feels like it's going to be perfect for summertime. Next summertime romance I have is The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. This book actually I give credit to for kind of getting me back into reading, even though I haven't read it yet, because I was on TikTok one day. It was one of the first times after I downloaded the app, and I saw this girl. She was sitting in her car and she was doing like a story time type video, and she's like, my sister just got married and everyone at the wedding got food poisoning except for me and the best man because we didn't eat the food, and my sister didn't want their honeymoon to go to waste, so she said that me and the best man should go together, but we both can't stand one another. And I was like, wow, this is a really crazy story, but it was one of those story times where they describe the plot of a book and make it sound like it's their own personal life story, and that hooked me. I instantly bought this book book right away, and that was like my intro to book talk. And I think my algorithm picked that up because it was while I was planning my actual honeymoon, and I brought this with me on my honeymoon, and I wish I had read it, but I just wasn't as into reading then. I was just getting into it, so I wasn't reading as much as I do now. But I feel like this would be such a special book to bring on a vacation, so I've been kind of saving it for that. I want to go on a tropical vacation and bring this book. Christina Lauren's books are kind of hit or miss for me. I feel like they're all over the place. They feel so different, so I never know how I'm going to feel until I actually read it for myself. But this is one that I do feel like I will love, and I feel like it holds such a special place in my reading journey. Also by Christina Lauren, I have The Paradise Problem. I think this is a recent release from them. I'm pretty sure it came out last year, and I heard so many great things. I feel like everyone that was reading this was loving it and saying how fun it was and how it was so funny too. And I really wanted to read it last summer, but just didn't have time to get to it. I'm pretty sure the tropes are like fake dating, maybe marriage of convenience. It just sounded like such a good time when I read the premise, and it sounded like the perfect summer read. So again, this is one I would like to bring with me on a vacation, but I feel like it would be a great pool read too. Next I have Happy Place by Emily Henry. It is crazy that I have not read this book yet because Emily Henry is one of my favorite authors. If you've been here, if you know what I do with Emily Henry's books is I bring each one of them with me on a different trip that I go on, because then I associate the trip with a different Emily Henry book. And I did bring this one with me on a trip that I took a couple summers ago, but I just didn't have time to read much while I was there. So funny enough, this book actually is set in Maine, and I'm planning a trip to Maine later this year. So this is the perfect book to bring with me on that trip. I'm so excited. I know everyone has different opinions on Emily Henry and her books, and they kind of all rank them all differently. People We Meet on Vacation is my personal favorite, which tends to be a lot of people's least favorite. So I kind of have unpopular opinions than everyone else when it comes to her books. But for some reason, I feel like this one is gonna be a 5-star, potentially maybe even top People We Meet on Vacation for me. I'm just curious to see what I think, and so excited to bring this with me if our main trip ends up happening. I'm manifesting that it will, so that I can bring this book and read it there with me. Then I have The Roughest Draft. This is actually by a writing duo who are a married couple, and the book is about a couple who are also a writing duo, and I think they have split up in the book, but they're still under contract to write one more book together, and it just sounds really interesting and fascinating. I feel like there's going to be a whole lot of tension. I've heard really great things about this one, and I've heard it compared to an Emily Henry book, so very intrigued. It is set in Florida, and sometimes I do go to Florida to visit family, but I haven't been in a while, so I feel like I put this one on the back burner in case I do end up going. This is definitely the book I would bring with me, but if not, I do think this would make such a great pool read. Then I have Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This is her release from last summer that I heard so many wonderful things about. Her books tend to be women's fiction with more of a subplot of romance. I read Nora Goes Off Script by her and loved it. I also read Same Time Next Summer. Didn't love that one quite as much, but I feel like that was a lot of people's least favorite of hers, and I've heard that people are just going crazy for this one. I really wanted to read it again last summer, but just didn't have time, so I feel like this will be one of my pool or beach reads this summer for sure. Then I have The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armis. This is one of the OG book talk books. I've had it for a little bit. It's been on my radar for a while, but only been on the physical TBR for maybe a year. I just feel like it would be such a great summer rom-com. It is workplace romance, I think fake dating, because our female main character needs a date to her sister's wedding. It takes place in Spain, which sounds like such a fun summery setting. I have been hesitant about this one though, because it gets compared to The Hating Game, which I was not a fan of that book, but I don't know. I just was kind of in the mood for one of the OG book talk books. Thought I would give this one a try because of how summery it feels, so I feel like I will read it at some point during the summertime. You With a View by Jessica Joyce sounds like such a fun storyline. Our female main character is grieving the loss of her grandmother, and she's going through her old pictures. She sees a picture of her grandmother with this mystery man, and she wants to know who the man is. So she posts something on social media about it. It goes viral, and then the grandson of the man in the picture reaches out to her. He just so happens to be her nemesis from school, and they all end up going on a road trip together. So I feel like there's going to be so much tension, and I've heard really great things about The X-Files by Jessica Joyce, so I also want to read that one if I end up enjoying this one. This is one that I might read next month because it's set in the mountains, I believe out west, which I'm going to Wyoming next summer, so it feels like it's going to be perfect vibes to get me hyped for my trip. Beg, Steal, or Borrow by Sarah Adams is book 3 in the When in Rome series. I'm so excited for this one. The storyline sounds so fun. It's rivals to lovers and the sister that we're following in this book, Emily. I have been been anticipating her story and her book. I love Sarah Adams books. They feel so fluffy. They're so fun to read. You don't have to think too hard. You can just sit back and enjoy it and have a fun time. This one was a new release that came out all the way back in January, but I have been saving it because when I flipped through, I saw that it actually takes place in June. So I'm kind of planning on picking it up next month. I'm really excited to continue on with this series and get the next sister in this family's book. The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary is another one that I feel like I want to read during the summertime. Something about a road trip just sounds like the perfect summer setup. And I love Beth O'Leary. All of her books I've rated so highly. I feel like they all have really fun and unique storylines and characters, and this one also got adapted into a TV show, so I definitely want to read the book and then watch the show after. I feel like this will be such a fun one for the summertime. Another Beth O'Leary book I want to read this summer is her latest release. This came out at the beginning of April. This one sounds so fun. We're following these two characters who have a one-night stand and then they're stranded out at sea together, so I feel like it's going to be a very tension-filled forced proximity situation. Again, love Beth O'Leary so much. This is another one of her books I want to read this summer. Float Plan sounds like it's going to be such a good summer read because I think pretty much the whole story is set at sea. It does sound like it's going to be more emotional though because our main female character is grieving the loss of her fiance, so she ends up taking a trip out at sea, but she needs someone to sail the ship for her, and I think she has a romance with the guy who is sailing her ship. So I feel like it's going to be a deep, emotional, and heartfelt story that I want to read in the summertime. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams is a second chance romance between two writers, and I always try to read this one during June because of the title and when it takes place, but it just never ends up working out. The timing is always off, so I feel like I need to try and start this one at the beginning of June so I can guarantee that it actually gets read during the month of June. That's definitely the plan for next month when I read this one. I have wanted to read it for so long. It's been on my radar and on my TBR for a couple weeks now, and I don't think I've ever seen a single bad review for this book, so I just have a strong feeling that I will really love it. I have a couple YA summer romances. The first one is Float. This one follows our main female character who moves to Florida from Alaska, and it's a big adjustment and change for her, and I think she has a romance with the guy who is like helping her adjust, teaching her how to swim, get used to the beach lifestyle, which sounds so perfect for summer. This one I heard started as a Wattpad novel and then kind of evolved, so it does get better the more you read is what I've heard, and I think what the consensus seems to be. But I just love a YA romance for the summer. I feel like the storyline and the setting is going to be perfect. Another summer YA romance that I have is Alex Approximately. This one is following another main character who moves far away to California, and as she is adjusting, she ends up getting a job, and a guy that she works with happens to be the same guy she's talking to online anonymously, but they don't know that it's the same person they're talking to, and I love that trope. I think it's so fun, so I can't wait to see how this one plays out. I've heard it is great for the summertime too. Okay, I have a small stack here of books I want to read this summer that are not romances. The first one is Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. I've never read an Ellen Hildebrand book before, but I've heard she is queen of the beach read, and I've heard this book has a little bit of everything. It has a little bit of mystery, maybe a little bit of romance, but I think it's more just like general fiction, and I have heard this book compared to White Lotus, so that really intrigues me because White Lotus is one of my favorite shows, so getting to read something that's like the book version of that sounds so fun. And one thing I learned that I love in books is a hotel setting, so definitely want to read this one this summer. It's been on my summer TBR for a few years now and I just never have time, but I'm gonna make it top priority this year. Then I have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This is actually a signed edition, which is super exciting. I got this at a bookstore when I went to the beach and they just so happened to have a signed copy, so I was really excited to pick it up because I love Riley Sager. I've read pretty much all his books. He's one of my favorite thriller authors, and this one sounds like a perfect summer setting. I know our main character back in the day when he was a child went camping with his best friend, and then when he woke up his best friend was missing, so now in the present as an adult I think he's going back to where all these events transpired and trying to figure out what happened. Very excited to read this one. I can't really remember what people have said about it. I don't think I've heard too many reviews on this one, season, but I think it will be a perfect thriller for the summertime. Then I have Outline by Rachel Cusk. This is one of my favorite covers that I own. This one feels perfect for summer, obviously the cover, but it's also set in Greece. I feel like this is another one I've been delusionally saving in case I go on a trip to Greece, which I don't think is happening anytime soon, but we can always manifest. This one sounds very unique, and I think Rachel Cusk's writing style is very unique. I'm gonna read what the inside says. It says, Outline is a novel in 10 conversations. Fair and lucid, it follows a novelist teaching a course in creative writing over an oppressively hot summer in Athens. So it sounds like it's gonna be more slice of life. I feel like the setting is going to play a big part in the book, which is why I feel like it's going to be a great one to read during the summertime. I also have The Wedding People, which I really want to read this summer. I think this is more general fiction. I heard wonderful reviews for this book last year. I know it's a little bit more emotional and sad though. Our main character is at this hotel and she learns that everyone there is celebrating a wedding and they're like wedding guests. And she is the only one at this hotel that is not affiliated with the wedding, but I think she ends up connecting with the bride. So I think it will be sad and emotional, but also a little bit uplifting. And again, it's set at a hotel, it's involving a wedding. Those things to me feel very summertime coded. I also have The Paper Palace, which my mom gave to me, and she said it's a really good summery setting. I know it's just basically like a family drama story, and the inside flap even says that it takes place during the month of August, so I kind of want to read it then. And I just feel like it'll be a lot of family dynamics. I think this is one that's more general fiction, and I think it's going to be a very perfect summery setting. Okay, now we're getting into the books that I want to read during the fall time. The first one is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I've seen the best reviews for this book, so many 5 stars, and I know it starts out at a Halloween party, which is why I want to read it during the fall time. And our two main characters have a one-night stand that turns out to be an accidental pregnancy trope, but I've heard that it's done so well despite that not being my usual thing. I've just heard great things about this book and about this author, so definitely want to give it a try. I also have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I obviously have to read during the fall time, during spooky season. I feel like this will be a good, more lighthearted read to read in between some like darker thrillers. And the back says, a warm and uplifting novel about an isolated witch whose opportunity to embrace a quirky new family and a new love changes the course of her life. It's kind of giving American Horror Story Coven, but a little more lighthearted and fun. So I cannot wait. I've heard really great reviews for this book. I also thrifted You Again on a whim at the end of the fall season last year, so I'm like, I have to read this one during the fall, so I'm saving it for this upcoming fall season. The cover screams fall. All I know about this book is that it's supposed to be like the movie When Harry Met Sally, which I actually have not seen, but again, it does not take much for me to want to read a book and convince me to buy it, and I got it on Pango at a good deal, so that's why I picked this one up, and I'm planning to read it during the fall time. Then I have Ace of Spades. This is a YA dark academia. I've heard really good things about this one, and to me, dark academia and fall time go hand in hand. I think this one involves some blackmailing and anonymous threats, and I've heard it has really good commentary on race as well, so I've had it on the TBR for a couple years now. Definitely want to read it during the fall time. I have The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson. This is the second book in the Truly Devious series, which I loved book 1. I read it a couple fall seasons ago. It reminded me a lot of the book version of the show Wednesday, and it was just such a good time. I think I put this one off for a little bit because as much as I loved book 1, I kind of forgot a lot of the details, and I don't really want to go back and reread the whole book, so I'll probably have to look online for like a spoiler summary or something before going into this one, but I really would like to continue on with the mystery and where things ended off in the first book. I also have the Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. These are YA books that have been on my radar and been on my TBR for too long. I've always wanted to do some kind of a reading vlog with these books, but I don't know if that will happen. I definitely want to read them all back to back though, and I feel like the fall would be the perfect time to do it. I know our main character is this girl who gets part of this inheritance from someone she's never met, so now she's kind of like conflicting with the family, and there's all these riddles and clues they have to solve together. I've heard it's kind of like an escape room in book form, which just sounds so fun. I feel like these books are going to be so fast-paced and such a good time to read. I also have the first book in the Natural series by the same author, Jennifer Lynn Barnes. These are YA mystery books following these teenagers that all have special abilities, and they use them to help the FBI solve these cold cases. I've heard wonderful things about this series. I don't know if I want to start with this or the Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, but definitely want to read both series in their entirety at some point. I also have the Hunger Games series still in the original packaging. I've never opened this. I've never read this series before. I've heard some people say they wish they could read this series for the first time, and I would love to do that because I've never read these books. So I kind of want to do some sort of reading vlog, like reading the Hunger Games series for the first time, especially since some of the prequels came out more recently. I would be very intrigued to read this whole YA dystopian series in its entirety. And then I also have Shatter Me. This is the first book in another YA dystopian series. This series just has so many books. I feel like that's why I put this off for so long, because I just don't want to get into all that until I can really dedicate the time to read the full series. Maybe not back to back, but at least close enough to each other so I don't forget details in between, because that's definitely happened and I don't want to have to go back and reread when there's so many books. But I know this is about our main character Juliet, who has a lethal touch, and she is imprisoned by the government because they want to weaponize her. And I've heard there's a really fun romance in this one as well. Okay, some more spooky books for the fall time. The first one is Tender as the Flesh. This is a dystopian horror novel that's set in a world where humans can no longer eat animal meat. So they have resorted to cannibalism, and I've heard there's a very crazy, shocking twist in this book, and the concept just sounds insane to me, so I'm so intrigued to see what's gonna happen. The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James sounds like the perfect spooky season paranormal type thriller. We follow two main characters set in two different timelines. In the present, our main character is working at this hotel where back in the day her aunt also worked at that hotel and she ended up going missing. So I think our main character in the present is finding out some clues of what might have happened to her aunt back in the day. It just sounds very eerie and creepy, and I'm excited to give this author a try. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I know this is a thriller following a Chinese American family in the 70s, and I believe the daughter of the family turns up dead, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of commentary on race based on who we're following and the time period it's set in. But I've heard really wonderful things about this book, and it's a short one, so I feel like it's going to be a good fast-paced thriller to get through when I'm feeling slumpy. Another thriller I have is The Dinner. This one is supposed to be the European version of Gone Girl, and I actually think I've seen the movie of this book. I'm pretty sure it was adapted, but I don't really remember what happened. I just remember thinking it was so crazy. So I'm excited to read the book. I think it's like a really tense situation where these two families have children that did something bad together, and they're sitting down at this dinner to kind of hash things out. So very, very intrigued to see what happens in this book. Confessions by Kane Minato, I think is a Japanese book translated into English, and it's following this teacher whose 4-year-old daughter was murdered, and she knows one of the students in her class did it, and I think she's just kind of like talking to them and trying to get a confession out of one of them. It sounds like such a high stakes, tense situation. I'm very excited to read this one. I feel like it's going to be such a page turner. I also have Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, same author as Gone Girl. I actually picked this one up and read a good bit quite a while ago and just never finished it, so I don't really remember anything at all about it, but I would like to read more from Gillian Flynn because Gone Girl is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It's the book that definitely got me into reading thrillers. The Woman in the Window is about this woman who kind of stares out and spies on all her neighbors, and one day I think she witnesses something very bad happen at one of the neighbors' houses, and I think I was spoiled for what happens in this book, the big twist, unfortunately. I'm hoping that what I heard isn't correct, but I don't know, that's kind of put me off from reading this one, and I've heard some not so great things about the author as well. So someone convinced me to read this if you loved it and think I should still give it a try. Scythe is a YA dystopian set in this world where all disease, hunger, poverty, war has been eliminated. So as a result, the human population is growing out of control. So there are these Grim Reaper type characters that decide who gets to live and who gets to die, which sounds crazy. I feel like it's going to be a little bit darker, but I don't know, since it's YA, I feel like it won't be quite as intense, I'm hoping. But this is the start to a trilogy, I believe, and I've heard good things. Wilder Girls, I've heard is like Lord of the Flies, but with girls instead of guys, and it's all these girls at this boarding school, and I think there's some kind of like pandemic on the outside, so they're all stuck and stranded at this school and they can't leave, and I think whatever is going on starts spreading in the school, so it sounds very tense. Piranesi, I think is a magical realism book that I heard is good to read during the fall time. It sounds so intriguing because everyone says you're not really going to know what's going on until a good ways into the book, but in a good way, not in like a confusing way. I think our main character is in this house and there's like all these mazes and he himself is trying to figure out what's going on. So I think as the reader, we're just on this journey with him. Next, I have some holiday Christmas themed books. First Christmas book I have is All I Want for Christmas by Maggie Knox. I read another book by Maggie Knox that was also a Christmas book and loved it. So I wanted to read their other Christmas book that they have. This book is a rom-com set in Nashville and the backdrop is this singing competition show. Our two main characters are aspiring country singers and they kind of have bad blood based on some things that happened between them in the past. I started reading this book and got a good ways in and was enjoying it, but I put it down, and by the time I went to pick it back up again, it was well into January and I was like, I really don't want to read a Christmas book in January. I will just wait and try to finish it out next Christmas season. So I probably will start it over from the beginning. I kind of forgotten a lot of the details. It wasn't anything too deep or serious, but it was a fun time. I also have Christmas at Reedy Falls. I picked this one up because it's set in my hometown and I just thought that was so fun. I definitely had to read a local book by a local author and I will read this one this upcoming Christmas. Then I have The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. This is the third book in the X-Hex series, which I read books 1 and 2 during spooky season. It's kind of interesting because those books are perfect for Halloween time. They're very witchy rom-coms, but this one is more of like a Christmas setting, which is so fun and different, and it takes place around a wedding. It says a Yuletide wedding, and I love books that are set around weddings, so I think this will be a fun one to read during the holidays. I've really enjoyed this series, so I'm excited about the third brother we're following in this book. Always in December is a more emotional romance that I've been putting off. I feel like during the holidays I want something more uplifting. It can definitely be a rough time of year for a lot of people, and I feel like sometimes I myself can get in a rut during that time of year, so I want more happy, uplifting, joyful books, and this one I think always gets pushed back because of that, but need to read it at some point during December. Meet Me at Christmas is Jenny Bayless's most recent book, which I picked up because I love her books. Most of them are set during the holidays and they just feel very cozy. They're very like British rom-com coded. I don't know really the details of this, but I adore this cover. And because I read other things from Jenny Bayless that I just loved and I knew I loved her writing, I wanted to give another Christmas book by her a try. Okay, and then I have the ACOTAR series, which I read the first book in January, so just the rest of the series I need to continue on with. But since I have the full box set, I just thought I would show you guys the whole thing. I did really enjoy the first book. I do think it lived up to the hype, so I'm really excited to continue on because I've heard it gets so much better after book 1. So I really cannot wait. I definitely think at least one of the books in this series will be a 5-star for me. Just need to continue on at some point when I have the time. And then once I finally finish ACOTAR, I do have Assassin's Blade, which is the prequel to the next series everyone recommends you read by the same author. There's definitely a lot of controversy around which book you should start the Throne of Glass series with. I think I'm gonna go with the prequel first, just based on different people's opinions, but I'm so excited because I've heard people love Throne of Glass even more than they love ACOTAR. Okay guys, that is every single book on my physical TBR. I have books all around me, so I am going to count them up and give you guys a total that I will put on the screen. It has to be over 100 though, because I feel like I've been talking forever. I'm losing my voice. This has been a very chaotic video to film. I feel like I had to change angles and camera batteries a few times during it, so thanks for sticking it out with me. Please convince me to read some of these books if you see your favorites, if there's ones you think I would love, any you want to see in a reading vlog, if you think I should unhaul any of these books, if you don't think I would like them, especially some of the books I needed convincing to pick up and read. Please tell me everything. I would love to chat with you guys all about these books down below in the comments. If you did enjoy watching, be sure to give me a thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed to my channel by hitting the red button. I would love to have you guys here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you so soon in my next one. Bye guys.